Hi everyone, I'm really excited to be here. I've had such a great weekend. I think these low carb down unders just keep getting better and better. What do you think? Yeah, thanks. So I'm going to talk a little bit about nutrient-dense family foods. I'm going to be talking a little bit more about some of the lists that Marty showed and kind of breaking that down more into everyday practicality for you and your family. And I can do that because I'm an expert in feeding these two. So they're my children there. I'm the founder of the Brisbane Paleo group. We're a large community group in Brisbane supporting anyone eating a real food way of eating, and we have over 1,000 members, so it's a really active group. We do lots of different events. I'm also a nutritional therapy practitioner at Nourishing Conversations. I see clients one-on-one or in small group programs. My small group program is called Restart, helping to gently transition people over from, eating a Australian standard diet over into a more low carb, high fat type of way of eating. So it's a really great program. And I do see clients online and at home in my home clinic in Brisbane. And I'm also a autoimmune paleo certified coach, which is really hard to say. And basically I can guide clients through their autoimmune journey, helping them to look at what foods they can and can't be eating, how to put them back into the diet, and all the dietary lifestyle factors that go with that as well. And I have a podcast called Low-Carb Conversations, which I'm about to talk about in a minute. But I wasn't always into health. In fact, I've had quite a journey, and I know a lot of you here have heard my story a few times, but basically throughout my whole life, I struggled with weight, fatigue, digestive issues. I had terrible digestive issues. I couldn't eat certain foods. I'd feel sick. I had lots of pain. I was tired constantly all the time, so much to the point where my husband would say to me, maybe you should leave your job if you don't like your job so much, because I just physically couldn't get out of bed in the morning. And I'd say to him, it's not that I don't feel okay. It's just that I physically can't get out of bed. I'm so tired. And so then I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition. And I was excited because I thought that I would take a tablet and that would be the answer to all my troubles. But it wasn't. And this picture here of me and my son was the turning point for me. I just felt so tired and no energy and constantly bloated, and just didn't want to be that way with having children. I wanted to have energy. I wanted to keep up with them, and I wanted to live life to the fullest. And so I joined CrossFit. I always tell this story. It seems like, a strange thing to do, but at the time everyone was joining CrossFit. But when I got there, it was really fantastic because they introduced me to a 30-day paleo challenge. And so I thought, I'll give that a go. And that was my first entry into real food. And from there, I just embraced it. I felt so much better. It cleared up so many issues for me. And I went on to lose 30 kilos. And, then I'm feeling so fantastic for quite some time. But then I started, eating a lot of, we all kind of know about paleo now, how I was eating a lot of sweet potato. I was eating a lot of paleo treats. I'd go out by then I'd had a second child, so we'd go out for coffee to a paleo cafe, and we'd have paleo cake. And, I was doing that quite regularly. And of course, things started kind of slipping back the other way again. And then because I'm, surrounded by you guys all the time in everything that I do at all of these events, I just absorb everything that I'm learning and, do some self-experimentation. And then I went, all right, well, I'm just going to drop my carbs, get rid of that sweet potato, get rid of those paleo cakes. I don't need those. But then that didn't really work so well for me either, because what I found was I really needed to up my fats. And once I upped my fats and started learning more about focusing on nutrient-dense foods that are going to make me fat adapted, that's when I started having so much energy, feeling like I do a lot of things. You guys probably have followed me around. I'm a busy mum. My husband works away. I teach small group programs. I help with the Nutritional Therapy Association. I'm running events all the time. I need this energy, and I feel great running fat adapted. And so that's what's worked really well for me. And so last year, I got to travel around with Jimmy Moore, which is fantastic. We did a couple of events on the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast and Brisbane together. And, we've met before, but this time round, I think we became really quite good friends, and he stayed at my house. And when he got back, he decided that he was no longer able to keep up with all the podcasts that he was doing, and I think he was starting a new one at the time, and books and everything that Jimmy does. And he was looking for a co-host to take over his Low-Carb Conversations podcast. And I have no podcasting experience or anything like that, but I do love to talk, you can probably tell, those of you who talk to me. And so I just was like, hey, Jimmy, I'll give it a go. And so the last year I've entered into the world of podcasting. It's been a steep learning curve, but it's been so much fun and so rewarding. And my co-host, Cara, she's in the US, and Jimmy, we've never met. Jimmy paired us together. She's 22, I'm nearly 40. We kind of bring a different approach to low-carb lifestyles to each other, but it works really well, and we interview guests. But the main thing I love about it is that I have this avenue to review news articles. So the premise of the show is we review the latest news health headlines, and we debate and debunk those so we can tell people out there that do not believe what you're reading in the news. I know a lot of people don't believe already here, not to what you're reading in the news, but just to give a different opinion of what these news articles are saying. So that's been a really rewarding experience as well. So if you're looking, for a podcast that is kind of telling it like it is and trying to debate what the normal news is telling us, then this podcast is for you. So in saying that, one of my roles I feel in educating people is to try and reduce the overwhelm. We are so conflicted with all this information of all these dietary advice out there. What is it that we should be following, and what is it that we should be eating? And for me, we are all bio-individual. And so we're all made up of all different past history, history to come, everything, makes us the person that we are today. And why is it that, I just have to sniff at a carbohydrate and, I'm already over my limit, where somebody else is able to eat quite a high lot of grams of them. So, and that's because we are all bio-individual. But for me, at the end of the day, the end result is that we all need to be fat adapted, because our body's preferred source of fuel is to be running on fat rather than burning sugar. And however we get there, so whether you get there via paleo, ketogenic, low carb, high fat, prime, or whatever the way it is that for you to get there, because we're all bio-individual, the end result is being fat adapted. And so an easy way that I try to break that down for people is to look at most nutrient dense foods. And I think that's something that's easy for people to be able to understand and recognize that if you're eating the most nutrient dense foods, you're already eating a well-formulated ketogenic diet, and we're going to look at that. So we focus a lot on macronutrients. So Marty touched on this, this was his presentation. So I just took all these slides now. In this low-carb world, we focus a lot on macronutrients. We focus on how much protein we're eating, how much fat we're eating, how much carbohydrates we shouldn't be eating, and so we focus a lot on those. But if we were just to focus on one of the macronutrients, like Marty showed, this is his slide, if we just focused on fat, we're not going to meet all the micronutrients, and micronutrients are vitally important. So they're important for all health, basically. So, and when you're deficient in these micronutrients, the body can't function normally. So I'm going to look a bit more at micronutrients. Why? And these days we are so deficient in micronutrients, and why are we so deficient? So you can see here that this is a slide showing the percentage of US population not meeting the recommended daily amounts of micronutrients needed for health. And if you just looked at zinc, that's 42% of the population aren't meeting those recommended daily amounts, and that's just the recommended daily amount. It's not even, over and above that. And zinc is needed for immune system. So already 42% of the population are missing out on vital nutrients. And why is that? I think a lot of us already recognize that our garden crops, the way that we grow things these days aren't what they used to be. So we've already got depletion in the soil from the environment, the way that we speed up our growth these days. So we're trying to get more food more quicker, and that's definitely reducing the micronutrients in the food. And there's studies that are being done for that in the landmark study. Also, we're tampering with food. So we're just taking, we're taking for example, a perfectly good coconut and then adding some chemical rubbish, combining the two together and devoiding that of the right nutrients needed in that product. So I don't know why we need to tamper with real foods. We're also not eating the same nutrient-dense foods we once did. And then there's been a growth in hyperpalatable foods. So this is what Rob Wolf coins. It's basically like we just want foods that taste good and quickly all the time. And these foods are usually devoid of nutrients. We're picking up a processed pizza from the freezer and putting it straight into a microwave and, you know, killing anything that is remotely any good in that anyway. And we're just not passing cooking skills on because of that, because we have microwaves, so we're not learning how to cook properly, so we're not cooking these nutrient-dense foods that we once used to. And I wanted to touch on the not eating the same nutrient-dense foods we once did. We were eating more foods that were offal and insects, and we were eating more seafoods and sea vegetables and shellfish before, which all these foods we're going to look at the nutrient density in those. So this is Marty's list of the most nutrient dense foods. So I like to break things down even more than that. So I've broken that down into, it's basically organ meats, high quality meats, grass-fed dairy, seafood, including all those ones I discussed before, eggs, nuts and seeds, vegetables including mushrooms. Mushrooms are very nutrient dense, and some berries. So what does this remind you of? Yeah, it's like a well-formulated, ketogenic, primal, paleo, low-carb diet. I did a little bit of some study with the paleo mum, Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, and she looked at the recommended daily amounts of nutrients that we should be getting in versus what we're missing, and then with the nutrient-dense foods, and put it all together and came up with this recommendation, which is we should be focusing on eating organ meats 3 to 5 times a week, seafood 5 to 6, and vegetables 8 to 10 times a day. Does anyone meet anywhere near that? No. And I don't either. And I'm not sure that that's actually really achievable. Maybe it is for some people, but you know, every day I'm not 100% that I could eat 8 to 10 servings of vegetables a day, depending on your carbohydrate tolerance, but we'll see about that. But it's worth trying to get those nutrients in. To break it down even further, I just say go to Marty's list, the most nutrient-dense foods list, or the one that fits your profile, and choose 1 protein, 1 fat, and 1 to 3 veggies from that list for every meal. That's the most simplest way to break that down. So now I'm going to talk about some of these most nutritious foods, because you're like, yeah, right, Leah, how do you get your kids to eat organ meat? And yeah, that's still a work in progress as well. Yeah, good luck with that. Also, I wanted to say too that if you want to know more about how to get your kids to eat food and the psychology around that, 2 years ago at Low Carb Down Under, I spoke about real food for families, and you can find that video on YouTube, so you can get some tips around how to kind of convince them to eat their organ meats. But I always say just find a butcher that you can trust. The quality of the meat, especially when you're eating organs, is more important than ever. So making sure that you can find a butcher that you know is going to give you some great quality meat. Pate is a really good entry point into eating offal. Most people think pate is quite a good one to start with. You could, I like hiding things. You know, us parents are great at hiding certain foods from their children. So, you know, slow cooking, casseroling, making chili, meatballs, burgers, grinding up. But some people don't even like doing any of that. They would just prefer to get it down the hatch as quickly as possible. So one of those, what you could do there is this thing called liver cubing, or putting it into liver pills. So basically you buy the liver, cut it up into small pieces, small enough to kind of take like a tablet, freeze it, and then each morning you go and pull it out of the freezer and have it. That's when the quality of the meat would definitely matter, especially because it's raw there. I suppose you could cook it as well if you wanted to. I haven't tried that though, but there's a lot of people out there that are claiming that it gives them a lot more energy and it's a good way to get the nutrient density in. But you know, people like Pete Evans these days are making liver pills that you can just go and buy, which is much more easier to do. So we decided that we're going to try kidney. And we have a great lot of farmers just west of Brisbane that I connect with that are doing regen farming, and they are doing such good stuff out there. So later on, if anyone wants to talk to me about it, I'm happy to point you in that direction. We got the kidney, We made a steak and kidney stew. That's something that my mum used to make years ago. I used a little bit of tapioca flour in there just to kind of thicken the gravy up, because in the past people would use flour to kind of thicken the gravy, and it turned out okay. The kids wouldn't even try it. My son's name is Sydney, and we're telling him to eat kidney, and we're making rhymes out of it. You know, Sydney, eat your kidney, and he was just like, no. And I'm pretty sure he doesn't even know what a kidney does or is. But anyway, that one was left for the adults to eat. But it's basically got mushrooms in there. They're the kind of round things that you can see. So more nutrient density. I'm trying to put nutrient dense vegetables into the nutrient dense meats, and that was steak and kidney stew. The second attempt was a bit better. So this one we minced up the offal through the mince, and then we put some more nutrient-dense veggies in there and just made like a shepherd's pie, and the topping there is cauliflower. So we just made a cauliflower mash. I made mine with coconut milk and then laid that on the top and put that back in the oven to bake, and that's really tasty, and everyone enjoyed that one. So talking a little bit more about seafood, like I think living here in Queensland, I know a lot of us do, it's easy to get hold of seafood. It's beautiful here, but still a lot of people don't like to eat it. So again, you know, trying to find a fish monger or a trawler or someone that you can get hold of straight away to get that fish in, and talk to them and ask them about how it's been sourced and where it's being caught is a good suggestion. You know, you can buy really good quality canned fish now, just, you know, from the health food stores, and you can also buy really good quality frozen fish from the health food stores as well now. So I know a lot of people like Canadian salmon, I think it is. So, and I know there's a brand called The Canadian Way. I think you can get in all the health food stores now, which is a very, very good quality salmon. But the thing we do is we just buy a lovely white fish that's really quite mild, like a flathead or a snapper, and just pan fry it in butter and just squeeze lemon on it. Like that just tastes amazing and so simple, really quick weeknight dinner. And the only thing, fish is a little bit more expensive, but it's around the same price as buying steak. So, you know, you're going to be eating steak with your children anyway, then why not try fish a couple of times? And again, if you don't like the taste of fish or the look of it, you can make that down into a pate or a spread, and you can make patties out of it. So like my mum used to always make a tuna patty, but that was always had Deb, you know, that fake potato stuff or whatever in there. So now you can just use cauliflower and zucchini or something like that, some vegetable base, make the patties out of it. And if you want it to be crispy, you can coat it in almond meal or something like that, and that turns out fine. There's heaps of recipes on the internet for that kind of thing. We tried a salmon frittata. So when I'm really busy and coming home quickly to get dinner on the table, I buy the hot salmon that you can get, and it's just plain hot salmon. It's ready to go. You just flake that into there, whatever veggies I have, heaps of coriander, which is really nutrient-dense herb, and then eggs, and then if you eat dairy, you can just put a bit of pouring cream into there, or I just put a bit of coconut milk, put it in a cute little skillet, and then you put that in the oven, and that just bakes up nicely, and then you like have it for brunch or lunch or dinner. Yeah, it's a really good suggestion. Also, you can make just an easy salad. So if you grow your own leafy greens, I just throw them on a plate, put the hot salmon on that, put some sauerkraut on top of that, and drizzle it all in olive oil. Simple, nutritious, nutrient dense. It's on the table in 5 minutes. Then we tried experimenting with sea vegetables. So the kids really love nori rolls. They're just the paper, I guess, from the seaweed from the sushi rolls. And so we cut up the nori rolls, put it on the bottom. I found these sea vegetables, which are quite good quality. They're actually preserved in salt, and they sit on the shelf. And you put them in water, rinse them off, and then they plump right up, and then you've got sea vegetables to try on there. And I just got that from a health food store, and they're really tasty. We just browned a bit of coconut aminos with pork mince, and just had that with the sea vegetables on it. It was really tasty. And then for the adults, we just put a bit of kimchi on top of that for a little bit of heat. And, you know, I'm not making 10 different meals. I've made one meal and just altered it for the different tastes in the family. So vegetables, a little bit more about veggies. So, you know, buying organic and spray-free where possible, and try to eat them at all meals, and leafy greens. But my most favourite saying about vegetables is use them as a vehicle to get more fat into your body. that's the best way to looking at vegetables, especially those that don't like to go near them. You think of it all, how a good way to get fat into your body. So celery is very nutrient dense, but I'm not really a big fan of raw celery, and the kids don't really like raw celery much either. But so we've been baking it or putting it on the barbecue. It's really tasty on the barbecue, and just drizzling oil over that, and it's really tender and sweet to eat. Yeah, it's really quite nice. Also Brussels sprouts. I know a lot of people don't like Brussels sprouts, but they are very nutrient dense, and the kids don't like Brussels sprouts much either, but we just slice them in half and put them on a baking tray, and they crisp right up and they go really crunchy and they're delicious, and the kids will eat them that way as well. All with putting fat all over the top of them as well. One thing I wanted to say was about bitter vegetables. So, we have 5 tastes. We're focusing around those 5 tastes quite often in our lifestyle these days, around sweet and salty and a little bit of sour, but bitter is one that we're quite often forgetting. And so we need bitter to stimulate digestion, to better digest fats. And so getting some natural sources of bitter flavour in, so that would be like your rocket and radicchio and chicory and all those kind of ones, and experimenting with getting some of those, beet leaves. So I just like getting fresh rocket, or arugula, as if you're American. I don't know how to say it. So just fresh, and we just grow it in the garden because it just grows crazy. Pick it, put it on the plate. So I might have our protein and another vegetable, and then we just have this beautiful fresh salad with olive oil drizzled on that as well, and it's just lovely to go with as an accompaniment to the meal. Also, I have a salad that I make made out of kale, and I know a lot of people don't like eating kale because they find it tough. The secret to kale is that it loves fat, it loves oil, and to start breaking it down, you need to massage the kale. So if you show your kale a bit of love and massage it, it will taste a lot better. So basically, I use half a kiwi fruit over the whole salad dressing, some whole grain mustard seeds, some apple cider vinegar, some olive oil. I mix that all around together, and then the kiwi fruit actually will start breaking down the kale as well with it, and just massage that round, and it turns out a nice, lovely, soft salad. A good way to get fresh kale in. Now, insects. This might be a little bit of a touchy subject for some, but I wanted to point out that Marty does not list insects in his most nutritious foods list, even though they are on that list, but it's due to the USDA database does not recognise them as a food. Although more than a quarter of the world are already eating insects anyway, they're not recognising it as a food yet, but they will, because it is highly sustainable. This is one of our future foods. They're looking at eating very high in protein, contains essential amino acids that we need in our bodies. So cricket's a great source. So you can eat them like this, just as a bit of beer nuts. We had a couple of years at Jamie's house. He gave us all some crickets to try. I had a really awesome picture of Peter eating some crickets, but my slide didn't turn out. But we just buy it now. They just grind it down into protein powder. That's the best way to have it. Grillo Protein, they're around the local area here. They're a great company. This one is mixed with cacao. So I just got the two together and made protein balls. My children did not even know there was a cricket in there at all. Cricket balls, yeah. So, and you can use the cricket flour anyway. You can bake with it. You can put it in smoothies, anything. It's a great source of protein. And I just wanted a quick note to say that even if you're eating out, you don't have to, not eat nutrient-dense foods. You can quite easily eat nutrient-dense foods out. This is at a Japanese restaurant. Beautiful sashimi. We had oysters. We had a really, really nutrient-dense meal at this restaurant in Brisbane with all the beautiful fresh seafood there. So yeah, look for the most nutrient-dense foods on the menu when you go out, and you can still have a great time. And I also wanted to say that diet alone, will not work adequately unless you address some other factors. So if you've got a high stressful life and you're not managing your stress correctly, even the most nutrient-dense foods still won't help you get to your optimum health. You need to address all the factors there. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. I said before, I've studied at the Nutritional Therapy Association. A lot of you have spoke to me over the weekend about where I studied. it was the best decision I made. I chose to study with the Nutritional Therapy Association because they offer, a Western A price approach in ancestral health, and it's so much aligned. We talk about ketogenic, paleo, primal, and it's the only one in Australia that offers this dietary ways that we're completely aligned with. So everything that I've learned is completely aligned with what I believe in, and that's hard to find in a nutrition education. So yeah, Nutritional Therapy Association. If you want to know more about that, we can talk later. Just feel free to come and ask me some questions. I'm doing a Facebook Live with them on November 7th, so look out for that. And I'll be sharing more about my journey and how rewarding it's been to be a nutritionist. And I've put together the recipes for you guys, so if you want to take a picture of that and sign up to the list on there, and I'll email you all the recipes that we tried with the family. And you can let me know how you go with your family. And if you've tweaked, I love seeing when people tweak the recipes. I'm not a huge recipe creator. I just cook simple food and suggest meal ideas. And I love seeing what other people can do with that. And I have about 20 billion different ways that you can contact me, but I'm most often on Instagram and Instagram stories. I'm pretty much an addict of Instagram stories. So if you want to connect with me, I'm Nourishing Conversations there. Follow our podcast as well, and the Brisbane Paleo group. So the next events that we have coming up, we're supporting Cale Brock and his Australian premiere of the Gut movie that he's just released. It's where he's travelled to Namibia to look at how the indigenous cultures are eating over there and what the effect that has on the gut microbiome. And he's an Aussie guy, he's from Adelaide, so really great to get behind and support. So there's a screening on the Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, and then if you're around other places in Australia, you can check his website out because he's travelling around. And then the most exciting news is this month, on the 25th of October, we're having a dinner talk with Daryl Edwards. He's the fitness explorer. I know a lot of you guys know him. And we're doing that at Thrive Restaurant up in Brisbane. So if you can make that, it's going to be an awesome night. He is a great guy. And if you're interested in knowing more about my nutrition consult or my small group programs or anything like that, I'm happy to have a chat. So thank you, everyone.